Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming your way to review a movie that just came out sometime this year, 2024, by the name of Deer Camp 86. So the thing that the way this movie crossed my radar was I pretty much frequent Blu-ray.com or Blue-ray.com several times every day just to see what the latest news is regarding this and that, and I use their page to see the latest markdowns or temporary sales or price reductions of Blu-ray titles and things that I may or may not be interested in. And it was a while ago that there was a little bit of a news blurb on Blu-ray.com about this particular title being released. It was a pre-order situation for this, which is now on Blu-ray, for this title by the name of coming out on Mill Creek, which was interesting, a brand new movie coming out on Mill Creek by the name of Deer Camp 86. And I'm like, that kind of looks kind of like up my alley, go out in the woods. And although I'm not a hunting enthusiast, I don't kill animals, that aspect doesn't really interest me. But the aspects that do interest me is, out in the woods, cabin location, being stalked by something. I mean, the trailer really didn't make it clear, but it kind of seemed in taking place in 86. I always kind of interested in these kind of titles that purport to take place in the 80s and things. It's always interesting to me to see how close they get. For the record, I think with the exception of like just the vehicles, a pocket Simon and camcorder, big VHS camcorder. I'm not too sure anything else. If those items, if those things weren't in this movie, I don't think it'd feel like it's necessarily 1986. But you got to give them credit for trying to do it. And honestly, the whole reason, one of the main reasons it's like 1986 is kind of to make the very end of the movie a little more like, ooh, I see how how it goes, kind of a thing. So not necessarily any kind of reason to have this take place in 1986 per se, but so this movie kind of, I think this year in 2024 had kind of a very, very super duper limited theatrical run, probably just here or there or whatever. And I was kind of interested in it, and lo and behold, it did end up on Amazon Prime for I think $6. And the DVD, or the Blu-ray rather, well, it is on DVD as well. The Blu-ray did come out, which is like $13, but I was like, you know what, because this is like, the trailer seemed interesting, but the humor in the trailer was kind of like, this could be a potential miss. Like, the trailer was like, I could either like it or not like it. The humor may be annoying, so I didn't really want to do a blind buy of the Blu-ray. I did the $6 48-hour rental on Prime, and I did actually end up watching it twice, 2 days in a row. I figured I liked it enough to do that. Plus I thought, well, let's see it again. Get my money's worth. You got 48 hours to watch it, so we'll watch it twice. My feelings about this movie are kind of like, I might end up with the Blu-ray maybe more around October, November-ish, because that's the time of year this takes place, November 1986 hunting season. I may end up with the Blu-ray. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm all about supporting independent movies. And what's interesting about 2024 is like one of my favorite horror movies, probably my favorite horror movie of the 21st century, which you may have seen my review for, In a Violent Nature, which is kind of the same thing, go in the woods and die. It's kind of interesting how then weeks later, then I would end up seeing this, which is go in the woods and die, and it's kind of interesting. Like, although I wouldn't call this anywhere, near the whatever you want to call it, genius or whatever, of In a Violent Nature, in my opinion, I still think it was enjoyable. And like I said, the trailer was like, when I saw In a Violent Nature trailer, I knew I was pretty much gonna love that movie. But when I saw the trailer for this, it was like, it could go either way. Like, the characters could be annoying, or maybe they'd be fun. And for the most part, I do think that the characters, primarily the bigger guy, who I think goes by Buck, I think that the lines in his delivery are relatively humorous and actually relatively funny. So the thing to go into this movie thinking about is it's more or less a comedy and then horror. Like, it is, I think the comedy, for me, And this is, you know, because of the fact that it's not the frickin' big budget Studio A movie. The reason why, you know, I think the humor in this movie is actually relatively humorous and decent and actually funny, which is amazing. I mean, I don't go in for a lot of the humor and kind of what I call corporate comedies, big Studio A movie kind of a stuff. It's all mostly just like roll your eyes and get the hell out of my life. But I thought because of the more low budget nature of this movie that the humor actually landed more or less, and it was really kind of humorous. It was more like, it reminded me of this movie that I reviewed years ago during the winter that came out in like 2005 or 6 or something. I was working at Movie Gallery when it came out, so that's how I saw it. But Randy Quaid, I want to say, is in it. He's the guy, Cousin Eddie from the Vacation movies, ain't he? Black Cadillac, which this movie kind of reminded me of, because not only the beginning at the bar, but just the camaraderie and you know, among the guys and the stuff, kind of reminded me of Black Cadillac. And I was just like, you know, I'm pretty sure I gave Black Cadillac amazingly 4 out of 4 stars. Like, I really love Black Cadillac's probably like my favorite like B movie that like came out in the early 2000s. Actually, yeah, if you haven't seen Black Cadillac and want to see, like, in my opinion, a relatively well done B movie from the early 2000s, check out Black Cadillac with Randy. I think it's Randy Quaid. Is it not Randy? I can never. You know, Dennis Quaid is the guy from Inner Space. They're brothers, I think. Yeah, Randy. You know, the guy from Independence Day and the Vacation movies and stuff. But yeah, I do think the reason I compared those two movies is because I like the dynamic among, you know, the characters are kind of realistically written. Like, it feels like actual guys hanging out. Authentic kind of dialogue versus just corporate studio, you know, AI generated frickin' dialogue that just makes you like, this isn't relatable, this isn't real life, you know, it's movie dialogue, whereas the dialogue in this, you know, feels like it's a group of friends for real. And so that's the initial, you know, one of the comparisons I have, you know, this movie, comparing it to Black Cadillac. And also, like I say, the beginning at the bar and stuff is reminiscent of Black Cadillac. But very briefly, the premise of this movie is just 86, November, deer season starting. This truckload of friends, co-workers, whatever the hell they are, go out to you know, hunt, go out to rent this cabin and hunt deer and stuff. And, you know, certain events end up happening which makes them become the target of this. It's kind of interesting because I don't generally go in for this kind of stuff. And supernatural entity in this movie versus just a flesh and blood killer. So it actually reminds me of Black Cadillac, and it also reminds me, you know, the entity, or the, you know, the whatever, the entity doing the killing reminds me of Predator. It's kind of like, this is Black Cadillac meets Predator meets who the hell knows what else. But yeah, very much I mean, even down to the sounds and kind of just the way the you know, the entity, the thing that kills people, you know, just, yeah, very much. If you've seen Predator, you know what I mean. I think it's definitely inspired by Predator from the first Predator movie, or I guess any of the Predator movies. But yeah, that's basically the gist of it. They go out just to do some hunting, and presumably the beginning of hunting season 1986, and just run afoul of this entity that, for reasons which will be explained as the movie wears on, is dispatching some of these individuals. And what's really cool about this movie is, like, it's a really sparse 80-something minutes or whatever, so that's appreciated in this era of 2-hour plus movies and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, very, very sparse, you know, nice running time. And, you know, seeing the movie back to back 2 days in a row was actually fine. And the reason I watched it again is just because I had, you know, another 24 hours of time to watch it, and I thought, well, get your money's worth. But also, like, you know, I was pondering, do I want to buy the Blu-ray? And I think I'll probably, like I say, I'll probably get the Blu-ray maybe in October or November or something, watch it around the time it takes place and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from this movie is just, like, I think the thing I like the most about it is the characters, and particularly, like, you know, when I saw the trailer, I didn't know if this Buck character was just going to be annoying. It's hard to tell with the trailer, you know. Same thing with, like, the humor in that one Wolf of Snow Hollow or whatever the hell it was. Like that trailer, like the humor seemed interesting, and it was hard to tell if like it was going to be annoying in the full movie or if it was going to be, you know, if it was going to be enjoyable. Turns out I did end up watching that and liked it enough to buy Wolf of Snow Hollow. I can't even remember. Yeah, I think I've reviewed it. If I haven't, I will, but I'm pretty sure I already reviewed that movie. I think the humor in Wolf of Snow Hollow is kind of interesting. I think the humor in this is a little more less dry and more relatable to people just hanging out with a group of guy friends or whatever. But yeah, I think that'll more or less be my review of this movie. The one thing that is a little bit of a bummer, but it's realistic because it's guys going out to kill deer, you know, in hunting season, is like the I can't say lack, but very very little like female in the female department. There's one, like, you know, hot chick or whatever, and for a very brief amount of time, and then it's just the rest of the guys or whatever. But you know, that's, I guess every movie doesn't need to have, you know, hot women all over the place or whatever. But yeah, so I guess it's realistic in that aspect. But what's interesting about this movie is, like I say, when you have a movie generally this kind of budget, this, you know, you don't really generally see like a supernatural kind of a, you know, killer or entity, if you will. And you know, it is interesting that they went that route with a relatively low budget movie. And I will say, like, the, you know, some of the, like, the visual effects to make the entity thing, it kind of reminds you of like that Last Jedi or whatever, some, you know, stuff going on and stuff, was handled relatively well. And I think I saw a blurb that this like won some award for best visual effects in a low budget movie or something, and I probably more or less probably more or less deserved. You know, I think it's the only thing about this movie that doesn't, you know, jive necessarily that amazingly with me is the supernatural aspect of the movie. But at the same time, it's really kind of cool, and I can't really necessarily disagree with it, you know, because it's like it is kind of a you know, something that I kind of more or less agree with and or whatever, and it's just like, you know, it kind of like a, I don't want to give, yeah, that's maybe giving it away, but just kind of a spiritualistic, spiritually moralistic, you know, stance on stuff or whatever. I don't know how to put it into words or whatever. But what would my star rating for Deer Camp 86 be? I don't think it's good enough. I don't think, for me, 3 stars is a little too high. I can go. Oh God, I think we can. I think it's enjoyable enough where I can go as high as 2 3/4 stars out of 4 stars. So nearly 3. Maybe just because of the supernatural aspect, maybe it knocks it down 1/4 of a star, making it 2 3/4 stars out of 4 stars. But I was expecting something that. I might have liked it a tad more than I thought I might. Like I say, it was hard to gauge whether or not the humor was going to land or if it was going to be annoying. You never know if it's going to just be annoying in the full movie or if it'll be fine. Luckily, it turned out to be fine, just like the humor in Wolf of Snow Hollow or whatever the hell it was. So yeah, I mean, if you can see this for a decent price or for free or something, I'd go for it. It's interesting, like I say in closing, how so far this year, and I don't expect any more to come out, but who knows, maybe it'll happen. But you know, one of my favorite movies of the 21st century, In a Violent Nature, you know, Go Out in the Woods and Die, came out, and then, you know, I saw that, and then, you know, Deer Camp 86 came out, which is similar, you know, same kind of premise, go out into the woods and die, and, you know, it's interesting how these came out relatively around the same time, and I saw them relatively around the same time. So I guess that pretty much does it for my review of Deer Camp 86. Like I say, the only thing that really kind of ties to 86 is just the vehicles and the Pocket Simon. And it's kind of interesting how the guy who has the Pocket Simon is named Simon. Wow, imagine that. And the shoulder-mounted full VHS size video camera. And it was kind of interesting, the stuff that they I want to say, being, having been from the era of the full-size shoulder-mounted VHS camcorder days, like, the footage that is supposed to be VHS footage is very, I can only assume it's real VHS footage, but if it's not, it's so good that I can't tell whether or not it's real VHS footage. So, being a kid of the 70s and the 80s and having, operated and messed with those actual video cameras in the 80s myself and 90s, it's fun, for someone getting on in years like myself to see a movie like this and see people with that kind of, utilizing that kind of technology. Like I say, I think they probably should have had at least one guy with a mullet or something. Like the fact that you got all these guys without one mullet, it's supposed to be 86 or whatever. Like, I don't know when mullets really, if they were even going on in 86 necessarily, but I think it was more of a late 80s kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, like, to look at the guys and stuff and the haircuts, you wouldn't think 86 necessarily at all. So that's, in closing, that's kind of some of the things I'd gripe about, having grown up in the 80s. Like, I'm not too sure it really had so much of an 80s feel, but at least they got the vehicles and the Pocket Simon and the VHS camcorder. Is that it? I think that's all that really kind of felt like 80s, so. But all in all, a pretty solid production. I mean, I generally don't go into for necessarily, that much of low budget movies, and it's like I say, it's interesting that, it's fair to say that In a Violent Nature was probably a bigger budget than this movie. This movie feels even less of a budget than that. What the irony is, like, I don't know if In a Violent Nature had any, like, visual effects, but the irony is that this has, visual effects, which is ironic, hence the irony. But anyway, as so often is the case, I'm just blabbing and blabbing and blabbing. You probably got other things to do today. I sure as hell don't. So I guess that pretty much does it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, we'll catch you on the next video.